What is the worst feeling ever? Story 1. Grief from the death of a loved one. I lost the love of my life after her 5-year battle with ovarian cancer. We were happily married for 31 years. Seeing the decline of a loved one is also a painful experience. In my case, it would be my parents. I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, this is the single most depressing thing in life. Your parents are never old until they suddenly are. They might fall or get injured. They don't have the energy to go up the stairs in their own home. They can't cook your favorite dish on your birthday. Suddenly it hits you. They're elderly, and you've been treating them like they're still the young and energetic people from your childhood. You finally take a moment to think back and you see the signs of their deteriorating health. A stumble here, a fainting spell there, a cut or bruise that takes forever to heal. But it was no big deal because your parents have always been strong. They've never slowed down or anything. You look across the table at the suddenly frail woman sitting in front of you, squinting at her crossword puzzle, and realize that you don't know how much more time you'll have together. It's then that you truly gain an appreciation for all your parents have done for you and what they will continue to do for you. You resolve to return the favor in what little time remains, not knowing that just by breathing, you've paid that debt long ago. Story 2. When I was a teenager, my father got another woman pregnant and decided to divorce my mother for her. On his last day at the house, he came into my room to say goodbye. As he was leaving, he told me, "I don't love you anymore, and I'm going to start a new family now. You probably won't ever see me again." I ran out of my room screaming and crying, holding on to his leg and begging him not to leave. My mother screamed and cried too. He dragged me down the hall, shook me off, cursed, and bolted out the door. I didn't see him again until I was 17. It was a pretty messed up thing, and it really hurt me as a kid. Just so you know, my mother was amazing. Fortunately, she remarried within a few years, and my stepfather has been an amazing person in my life. I'm 38 years old now, so this was a while ago. To this day, I only talk to my father maybe once a year. When I was about 25, he cried to me and asked for forgiveness. I no longer hate him, but I don't really want to feel anything about it at all anymore. I do have a half-sister now, and I like my relationship with her, so occasional contact with my father is inevitable. With that being said, he claimed he didn't remember ever saying that to me when I confronted him about it a decade ago. Then he finally admitted that if he said something like that, it was because he thought it would help me face the reality of the divorce and transition easier. Kind of BS. Those are scenes that you could only imagine in a drama, but seriously, that dad sounds like a real jerk. Story 3. Trying hard to make friends, but failing is honestly the worst. There's nothing worse than talking to yourself in a group of people. This hit me harder than most other things out there. I've spent my entire life trying to find someone or some people to hang out with, but I'm just the awkward outcast all the time. I have no one to be with physically. Addendum. This wasn't supposed to blow up. There are too many comments to read, but the most I see say to find a hobby or just talk to new people. I've been trying to find hobbies that would be interesting and enjoyable to me for years, but I've come up blank. And on the topic of just talking to new people, it's so freaking hard. I get scared of talking to current online friends just because I feel like I might accidentally insult them somehow. Actually, walking up to someone and saying hi is a monumental task I can only attempt once in a blue moon. Not to mention that due to my lack of aforementioned hobbies, I have basically no conversation topics. So when I do say hello to someone, I just kinda shrink away immediately. Not to mention that I also cannot interact with groups of people very well, usually becoming a silent observer. Story 4. I know relationships are never 50-50. But loving someone more than they love you after spending years with them is heartbreaking. Finding out from your friends that your significant other is cheating on you hurts even worse when it's completely unexpected. It's like your heart sinks to your feet and your mind goes into a spiral of thoughts and emotions about why you weren't good enough. This betrayal of trust can tarnish your views on so many things for a long time and even stay with you forever in some way. It's a deep betrayal, especially if you truly love them. Recovering from this is not easy. I've had to deal with this twice, and the second time was really unexpected and messed up. I haven't had much feeling since then. It's kind of destroyed what was left of my emotional capacity. I've been trying to restore it for years, but with no luck. My wife of 12 years had an affair and tore my family apart. I lost everything and hit the darkest place of my life. I can honestly say that at one point, I didn't think I'd make it, but my kids were my rock. They helped me more than they'll ever know. I'm now a year and a half out of that, and I've done a lot of self-healing and focused on myself. If I can tell you one thing, it's that the way someone treats you is a reflection of them, not you. You were always good enough. They just weren't good enough for you. Much love, my friend. Story 5. Regret. I'll never forget a time ages ago when I was just a young student in grade school. There was this teacher who stood before the entire school and delivered a presentation that left a lasting impression on me. Looking back, I think he must have drawn inspiration from a book or some source, but I was oblivious to that at the time. He began with a simple piece of paper and drew a stick figure on it, telling us, "This is your friend or someone you hold dear." He continued, explaining how all our relationships start out like that drawing, smooth and uncomplicated. Then he crumpled the paper into a tight ball, saying, "This represents an argument, a fight. This is you being selfish or cruel, hurting someone you care about. You take that one smooth, clean paper and turn it into something sharp and crinkled, to the point where you can't even recognize what it used to be." Afterward, he carefully flattened the piece of paper, but it still bore all the creases. He continued, "And this is what happens after you've apologized for that fight. You see, it might look like it did before, but the lines will always be there. Just like a piece of paper, nothing can stay perfect forever. All of your relationships will become complicated, just as every person's smooth, youthful face will eventually become wrinkled like mine with age. But before you do something mean or cruel, ask yourself if it's worth altering the shape of your relationship with that person forever." I don't know why, but that lesson has stayed with me throughout my life. It ingrained in me the idea that even actions as seemingly inconsequential as an argument or a word spoken in anger have consequences, not only in the moment, but consequences that can shape a relationship for a lifetime. Mad props to the teacher for teaching such a valuable lesson in a way that's so memorable. Wish every teacher would teach like that, instead of soul-crushing grinding machines like in that Pink Floyd music video. Story 6. Have you ever longed to feel one last warm hug or hear one last joyful laugh from a cherished person who's no longer with us? The ache that engulfs your entire being in the wake of their absence is indescribable. Then there are those dreams. The dreams where they come back to you when you're together again, where happiness prevails. These dreams are bittersweet because when you wake from them, it's like losing them all over again. Sometimes it feels like you'd rather not dream at all than face that pain. And then there's the heart-wrenching experience of watching somebody you deeply care about make a mess of their life. All you can do is stand by, helpless. I remember my own struggle with painkiller dependency. The cycle of getting clean, only to relapse within months, felt never-ending. Each previous attempt had been for someone else, not for me. It was only when I decided to help myself, to take control on my own terms, that things changed. I walked away from that dark chapter for good, and that was 7 years ago this June. It's a harsh truth that often you can't pull someone out of the abyss unless they're willing to take the first step themselves. You might not always feel like you matter, but you do, and you matter to me. Story 7. Grief. It's like a tidal wave of emotions, overpowering, inducing panic, and tearing at the very core of your being. 4 years have passed since I lost my son. He was an incredible son and an exceptional human being. In the immediate aftermath of his passing, shock held me in its grip. I found myself organizing his funeral, ensuring he was laid to rest just 4 days after his untimely departure. I took it upon myself to write his obituary and select appropriate funeral attire, not just for myself, but also for his 2 half-brothers and sister. I carefully chose the clothes he would wear in his final rest, and even bought him new shoes. I remember purchasing a belt from the skate shop he frequented, and a young man there quipped, "Had enough of those shoelaces?" Because that's what my son had preferred. Finally, family and friends praised how I handled myself with grace, and deemed me elegant in those trying times. Little did they know I was racing against a ticking time bomb of emotions, knowing I could only hold myself together for a few days before falling apart completely. My son deserved a beautiful send-off, and I made sure it happened. Returning home after the internment, the floodgates of grief burst open. I unleashed primal animal-like sounds of despair, burying my face in my pillow and letting out cries I never knew I could make before. It was a pain so deep that it was almost physical, like the most agonizing ache. The following months are a blur in my memory, as if my heart had been forcibly torn from my chest. The grief was so immense that it manifested as physical pain, a sensation I couldn't have imagined. Every single day, I shed tears. I miss him deeply. No one had prepared me for the physical toll grief would take. I recall amidst the fog of absolute emotional devastation, the way my entire chest felt, as though it had been physically crushed. Death is like the period at the end of a sentence. It marks the end of a chapter, but the story continues even if the process is really painful. If you're down with Mikasa Ackerman from Attack on Titan and believe that the world is cruel but very beautiful, then you're my people. For more stories, go like and subscribe to my channel. Story 8. We need to talk. And then when you text back right away, they don't text for hours. My wife does this even when there is nothing wrong. Hey, can we talk tonight? Cut 2. What do you think about insert tiny home improvement project? It always stresses me out, so I call her out on this and she's gotten better about it. Also burnout. No joke. Job, school, home life, whatever. Everyone has a breaking point, and once you realize you've reached it, it's a very real moment. It sucks. What sucks even harder is that depending on what is causing your burnout, you can't just dial it back and go back to normal. A lot of people are forced to work more than they should and are stuck with responsibilities they can't avoid. And that just sucks harder. I'm recovering from habitual burnout myself. I couldn't take time off work, I couldn't deal with my health problems, etc. It was getting so bad I couldn't even think. I finally changed jobs and things have gotten a bit easier, but it's a slow recovery from being that way for 6 years or so. Story 9. Getting news that your sibling has stage 4 melanoma is devastating. Our parents have both passed, so I'm realizing that sooner than I thought, I'm going to be the only person left in my immediate family. This sucks so much. Thanks for all the positive thoughts and everything. I'm 8 years younger than my brother, but we've always been very close. He's married with 1 kid, and I'm married with 2 kids. But it's just different when you and your sibling have been through so much together. You're a team. I really appreciate all the comments, guys. Thanks. I don't think anyone will see at this point, but my brother passed away last Wednesday. He had surgery the week before, and they put a stabilizing rod on his femur, but he declined after that. I'm shattered, and I feel loneliness like no other. Story 10. A few years ago, I faced the difficult task of helping an elderly woman euthanize her aging cat. She had recently lost her only daughter to cancer, and her husband just a month prior. Amid her grief, I approached her and asked if there was anything I could do to ease her pain. She looked down at her beloved cat nestled in her arms, tears streaming down her face, and amidst her sobs she uttered, "I just want my family back." If you've ever witnessed an elderly woman's heart shatter as she grapples with the sudden and irrevocable loss of all her loved ones, then you have my deepest sympathy. It is a truly agonizing experience. A friend once shared a poignant story with me. His wife, a realtor, had a client, an elderly man who had to sell his home and move into assisted living. Regrettably, he couldn't take his beloved cat with him, and my friend's wife agreed to foster her until she found a forever home. "I'll never forget the day we went to pick her up," my friend said. He held on to her tightly and whispered, "You saved my life," to her. It turns out he had adopted her just before his wife passed away, and she had become his sole companion. While our situation is not quite the same, as we can still provide updates and visits to the elderly man, that moment of relinquishing your last family member brings forth a desolate loneliness that I, selfishly perhaps, hope to avoid until my very last days. Pets can save you from sadness because they're always happy to see you, even when you're not happy to see yourself. Story 11. When you love someone who doesn't love you back, or when you're in a relationship with someone whose morals don't align with yours, it can be a slow and painful process. You may keep telling yourself that things will get better, or that you can make it work, but eventually, you may realize that it's not love that's keeping you together, but the fear of change. My ex-boyfriend of 4 years broke up with me because he had grown out of loving me. We're still friends, but it hurts. And I think it always will. A little bit. It's so much worse than when your SO does something awful to you. When that happens, you can at least accept that they broke your trust and went against the values you shared. You can blame them. But when someone just doesn't feel the same way anymore, respectfully tells you the truth, and does their best to end things well, that'll keep you up at night. Story 12. When you suddenly cannot breathe properly and your heart beats hard in your chest from the pain of knowing you can never see or talk to someone ever again. It's called grief. I'm so sorry to those who understand this pain and for your losses. And then you forget for a while, and it hits you again like it's all new. I'm so sorry you're going through that. This reminds me of that thing Raymond Reddington said in The Blacklist. There is nothing that can take the pain away, but eventually you will find a way to live with it. There will be nightmares, and every day when you wake up, it will be the first thing you think about, until one day, it'll be the second. Another type of pain is the feeling of a full-blown panic attack. You lose all control and think you are dying, and it just incapacitates you for a while. I just had a 2+ hour episode of full-blown panic attacks this evening, and 3 hours earlier, I'm still having issues, but it's like 35% better now. And maybe a more conventional feeling would be anxiety, like when you're getting called into the boss's office and you have zero idea why, but you feel a bad omen like, what did I do? Am I in trouble for something you don't even know you did? The waiting game sucks. Story 13. When someone you love doesn't respect you, or they see you as a joke, it can be incredibly hurtful. It's even worse when they make a joke that hits too close to home, and you have to fight back tears in front of everyone. A few years back, I started my own business. I was excited and passionate about it, but it ultimately failed. As I was grieving the loss of my business, my spouse said in a bitter tone that he knew all along that I'd never make it. He scoffed and laughed as he said it. This was the same spouse who had previously said he was proud of me for taking on this challenge, and that he knew I could do it. I've never fully trusted him or anything he's said to me since. I now do things for myself, never for us. The most painful stabs are those that come from the people you love and trust, not from Ghostface. Story 14. Seeing your dad cry is like a wake-up call that things have taken a serious turn. When your mom sheds tears, it's either because you've made a big mistake or the situation is utterly heartbreaking, and you can't help but sympathize with her. My father passed away in his early 50s, and in all those years, I witnessed him cry just twice. It's a reminder to cherish your parents and hug them more often. They go through their share of pain too, even though they may not always show it, because they feel the need to stay strong for you. Now, while it might not be the absolute worst feeling, there's one that certainly ranks up there. That brief, agonizing moment when you realize you've made a colossal blunder. It's like a lightning bolt of dread coursing through your spine, your forehead breaking out into a sweat, and all you can do is lower your gaze at a 45-degree angle, mentally bracing yourself for the fallout. This can range from sending the wrong text to the wrong person to facing much more serious consequences. The feeling, however, remains the same, pure, unadulterated panic. Story 15. Feeling like a burden is incredibly tough. It's that sense of never expressing your thoughts and emotions, leading to a profound and isolating loneliness. It's one of the most challenging experiences, wanting to share what's bothering you, yet fearing that your own struggles might bring others down. People often suggest talking to a therapist, but sometimes you can't even bring yourself to be a source of burden to someone who's being paid for it. And then there are those moments when you just crave a conversation without any time constraints, or you simply long for physical comfort. A warm hug that says more than words ever could. Unfortunately, therapists can't provide that kind of solace. Story 16. My girlfriend cheated on me with my best friend in my vacation house, while I had invited them both. I caught them in the bathroom, thanks to another friend who was there. I had asked her out 3 days earlier, and my best friend knew because I literally told him everything, and he helped me plan the date. They've been together for nearly 2 years now. I can't trust anyone anymore. The worst part is that I can't even trust myself. To clarify, I had been officially dating my girlfriend for 3 years before the betrayal. Story 17. Loneliness. That deep, dark loneliness that leaves you feeling isolated and forlorn. It engulfs you when you're alone, but it's even worse when you're in the presence of someone you love. There's no lonelier feeling than feeling utterly disconnected and abandoned by someone who was once your best friend, lover, or partner in life, yet you still live under the same roof and pretend to go through the motions. I enjoy talking to older adults, but sometimes the type of loneliness they talk about is heartbreaking. One woman in her 90s told me she feels like the world is no longer made for her, and that everyone she truly connected with is either gone or incapacitated. On a lighter note, one of my neighbors is 95 years old and still lives on his own. He jokingly pointed out a 1960s tractor on his property and said that sometimes when he sees it having mechanical issues, he thinks, "I just replaced that part a few years ago." Then he realizes it was 30 years ago and that he's in his 90s, not his 60s. I'm also lonely but happy at the same time, since I prefer to be alone with myself. At least we have the internet and funny memes to keep us company, right? Story 18. Losing hope. Specifically the hope that things will get better. I recently read a headline on The Onion. Man who thought he lost all hope loses additional hope he didn't even know he had. Luckily it only applied to mundane things in life, but I can relate. This is where I am right now. I can't imagine any future at all. Not good or bad. When I look forward, I can't see anything at all. I've also had the experience of telling someone about something that happened in the past and realizing that it wasn't normal. That moment when you're telling a funny story from your childhood, and everyone's eyes just keep getting wider and you realize that you have traumatized them. But no, it's not really that you traumatized them. Don't think like that. It's a concern for you, and even a little or a lot of anger toward whoever the story was about, assuming this is about something messed up your family did to you. Story 19. A combination of monotony, boredom, insecurity, and anger along with the need to get out of bed every morning because you have responsibilities, and the feeling like all you want to do is sleep because your dreams are better than reality. Yes, my whole day is just a bunch of stuff I have to force myself to get through until I can go back into blissful oblivion. So I had this random thought a few weeks ago. Most cats sleep 12 to 16 hours, but 40% of cats sleep more than 18 hours a day, so they basically live in a dream world with occasional breaks in reality. Yeah, this world crushes our dreams, so maybe we should all just start living like cats. Less stress, more sleep, and more time for rolling around in catnip. Hey, if you made it to the end of this video, then you're probably craving more. Go check out what is considered socially unacceptable for no reason. Story 4 is crazy. Don't miss it.